My wife Beatrice died on a Tuesday morning, leaving behind a $55 million textile empire and a hole in my chest the size of the Atlantic Ocean. By Friday afternoon, my daughter Victoria had inherited the house, the money, and the power. By Friday evening, she had thrown my suitcases onto the wet pavement and told me to go die somewhere else because I was useless now. She thought she had won the lottery. She thought I was just a senile old architect who had ridden her mother's coattails for 40 years. But 3 days later, as she sat in a mahogany-paneled office, her face draining of all color, she learned a very expensive lesson. She asked the lawyer why she couldn't access the accounts. He didn't answer her. He just looked at me, smiled, and asked, "Did you even read the will, Victoria? Because if you had, you would know that you just donated your entire inheritance to a cat shelter. Before I tell you how I destroyed my own daughter's financial future to save my dignity, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments if you have ever been underestimated by your own family." The rain in Boston has a way of chilling you to the bone, but it was nothing compared to the frost radiating from my daughter standing next to me. We were at the Mount Auburn Cemetery. The priest was reciting the final committal prayers, his voice a low drone against the tapping of the rain on the umbrellas. I was 73 years old, standing over the open grave of the woman I had loved for half a century. I wanted to weep. I wanted to fall to my knees and claw at the dirt. I wanted to scream at the gray sky until my throat bled. But I didn't. I stood straight, my hands clasped behind my back, because I could feel eyes on me. Not the eyes of the mourners, but the calculating, predatory stares of my only child, Victoria, and her husband, Justin. They weren't mourning. They were waiting. I watched Victoria out of the corner of my eye. She was wearing a black designer dress that probably cost more than my first car, and she was checking her phone. Not a discreet glance. She was scrolling. Her thumb moved rhythmically over the screen, likely checking her social media feed or knowing her the current balance of the family trust. She didn't shed a tear. She didn't reach out to hold my hand. She just shifted her weight from one foot to the other, checking her diamond-encrusted watch every 30 seconds, as if her mother's burial was a dentist appointment that was running late. Then there was Justin, my son-in-law, a man who had never worked a hard day in his 40 years of life, standing there in a suit that was too tight, trying to look solemn, while his eyes darted around the crowd, counting the wealthy guests. He leaned in close to Victoria, not to comfort her, but to whisper, "I have good hearing for my age." I heard him. He asked, "Did you get the code for the wall safe in the study yet?" That was the moment the grief in my chest began to harden into something cold and sharp. My wife hadn't even been covered by the earth yet, and they were already trying to crack the safe. They thought I was deaf. They thought I was a relic. To them, I was just Fred Winslow, the retired architect who spent his days reading in the library and tending to the garden. They saw Beatrice as the source of the money because her family name was on the textile mills. They didn't know who had actually run those mills for the last 30 years while Beatrice chaired charity galas. They didn't know who had diversified the portfolio into tech stocks in the 90s. They saw the old man, but they missed the operator. The ceremony ended. The guests began to disperse, murmuring their condolences. I walked toward the limousine, feeling the weight of my age in my knees. I expected to ride back to the estate with my family. It was tradition. It was decency. But as I reached for the door handle of the lead car, Justin stepped in front of me. He didn't look me in the eye. He looked over my shoulder, picking a piece of lint off his lapel. "Fred, you should take the second car," he said, his voice smooth and dismissive. "Victoria and I need to make some calls. Estate business. You understand." I understood perfectly. I was being demoted, relegated to the B team at my own wife's funeral. I nodded slowly, not trusting myself to speak, and climbed into the second sedan. As we drove away from the cemetery, winding through the wet streets of Boston toward Beacon Hill, I looked out the window and realized that the silence in the car wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of a man who realizes he is completely alone in a cage with two starving hyenas. We arrived at the Winslow estate. It was a magnificent house, a brick Georgian revival that I had restored with my own hands 30 years ago. It stood proud and imposing, a symbol of everything Beatrice and I had built. The lights were on. It should have felt like a refuge. Instead, as the car pulled up to the circular driveway, I saw something that made my blood run cold. My vintage leather suitcases were sitting on the wet cobblestones. 3 of them, lined up like garbage waiting for pickup. The driver stopped the car. I got out, ignoring the rain that was now coming down harder. I walked over to the bags. They were soaked. One was open, a sleeve of my favorite cardigan dragging in a puddle of muddy water. I looked up at the house. The massive oak front doors were closed. Victoria was standing there. She wasn't opening the door. She was blocking it. She stood on the covered porch, dry and imperious, her arms crossed over her chest. Justin was leaning against the stone pillar next to her, a smirk playing on his lips, holding his phone up. He was recording me. "What is this, Victoria?" I asked, my voice steady, though my hands were trembling. "It's moving day, Dad," she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of any emotion, like she was ordering a coffee. "I don't understand," I said, stepping onto the first step of the porch. "I live here. This is my house." "No," she corrected me, holding up a hand to stop me from coming closer. "This was Mom's house. Mom is dead. Now it's my house." I stared at her. This was the girl I had taught to ride a bike. The girl I had sat up with when she had the flu. The girl whose tuition at Yale I had paid without blinking. I looked for a trace of my daughter in her face, but all I saw was greed. "Beatrice and I built this life together," I said, trying to appeal to her reason. "We have lived here for 30 years. My name is on the deed." Actually, Fred Justin chimed in, stepping forward. The camera still pointed at my face. "We checked. The deed was in the trust, and the trust beneficiary is Victoria. You were just the husband. You were the +1. And the party is over." Victoria nodded. "Look, Dad, let's be realistic. You're 73. This place is huge. It's expensive to heat. It's full of stairs. You're a liability. We're doing you a favor. You can't maintain this lifestyle anymore. You're useless here. We have plans for this place. Justin wants to put in a home theater where your office is. We need the space." My office. The room where I had designed skyscrapers. The room where Beatrice and I used to sit by the fire and drink brandy. They were going to gut it for a movie room. "You can't do this," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You cannot throw me out on the street on the day of your mother's funeral." "I'm not throwing you on the street," Victoria sighed, rolling her eyes. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a wad of cash. She crumpled it up and tossed it at me. It hit my chest and fell to the wet ground. It was $500. "There. That's enough for a week at a motel. Go find somewhere cheap. Maybe Florida. Old people love Florida. Just go die somewhere else, Dad. We want to start our new life without the smell of old age in the hallways." I looked down at the money in the mud. Then I looked at Justin. He was laughing softly. "Make sure you get a shot of him picking up the cash," Justin muttered to the phone. "The guys at the club will love this." I didn't pick up the money. I looked at my daughter one last time. I didn't see anger in my own reflection. I saw clarity. For years, Beatrice had warned me. She had told me that we had spoiled Victoria, that Justin was a parasite, that we needed to protect ourselves. I had always defended them. I had always said, "They're young, they'll learn their family." Beatrice was right. And I was a fool. "I won't ask you again," Victoria said, her face hardening. "Leave the keys on the step and get off my property. or I will call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. Don't think I won't do it." I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the heavy brass key ring, the keys to the house I had restored, the keys to the life I had built. I placed them gently on the stone step. "You're right, Victoria," I said. "I am old. I am tired. And I clearly don't belong here anymore." I turned around. I grabbed the handles of my 2 heaviest suitcases. I left the third one. I didn't look back. As I dragged my luggage down the long driveway, the wheels clicking against the stones, I heard the heavy thud of the oak doors slamming shut and the click of the deadbolt locking. I walked for a mile in the rain until I reached the main road. I hailed a cab. The driver, a young Haitian man, looked at me in the rearview mirror with concern. I must have looked like a drowned rat, an old man in a funeral suit, dragging his life behind him. "Where to, sir?" he asked. "Take me to the Starlight Motel on Route 1, I said. He hesitated. "Sir, that place it is not nice." "Are you sure?" "It's what I can afford right now," I lied. "Just drive." The Starlight Motel was exactly as I remembered it from driving past it for 20 years. A low U-shaped building with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign that buzzed like an angry hornet. I paid for a room with a credit card that I prayed hadn't been canceled yet. It went through. Room 104. The room smelled of stale cigarette smoke and pine cleaner. The carpet was sticky. I sat on the edge of the sagging mattress and listened to the sound of trucks roaring by on the highway. I was wet, cold, and homeless. I took out my phone. I opened my banking app. I needed to see the damage. I tried to log into the joint account Beatrice and I had shared, the one with the liquid operating cash, about $300,000. Access denied. User locked. I tried the savings account. Access denied. I tried the investment portfolio login. Access denied. She had moved fast. Faster than I gave her credit for. She must have had the death certificate ready and faxed it to the banks the moment the funeral ended. She had frozen everything. She had stripped me clean. She thought she had cut off my oxygen supply. She thought that without access to that money, I would come crawling back, begging for a room in the basement, begging for scraps. I put the phone down on the nightstand. I stared at the water stains on the ceiling. I felt a tear run down my cheek, hot and angry, but I didn't wipe it away. I let it fall. I let the pain wash over me for exactly 5 minutes. I mourned the daughter I thought I had. I mourned the illusion of family. Then I sat up. I took a deep breath. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, mechanical precision. I wasn't just a retired architect. I was a man who had navigated the shark-infested waters of Boston real estate for 40 years. I had dealt with corrupt union bosses, city inspectors, and ruthless competitors. My daughter and her idiot husband were amateurs. They were playing checkers. I had been playing chess since before they were born. I picked up the phone again. I dialed a number I knew by heart. It rang twice. "Leo," I said, when the line opened. "Fred. It's late. I was just at the funeral. I didn't see you at the reception." "Where are you?" "I'm at the Starlight Motel, Leo. Victoria threw me out. She locked the accounts. She told me to go die somewhere else." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Leonard Katz was not just my lawyer. He was my oldest friend. We had played poker every Thursday night for 20 years. He was the only person who knew where every single skeleton in the Winslow closet was buried. She did what Leo's voice was low dangerous. "She kicked me out, Leo. She thinks she owns it all. She thinks the will she saw 5 years ago is the final one." Leo let out a short, bark-like laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the sound of a wolf spotting a limping deer. "Oh, Fred." She didn't read the addendum. She didn't read the clause we added 6 months ago when Justin bought that stupid boat with your credit card. "No," I said. She thinks she's the Queen of England right now, Fred Leo said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Do you want me to call the police? We can get you back in there tonight. It's illegal eviction. No, I said. Let them have the weekend. Let them celebrate. Let them spend money they don't have. Let them think they've won. I want them to feel comfortable. I want them to feel safe. I understand, Leo said. Monday morning, I agreed. Leo, activate Clause 13 and prepare the forfeiture documents. I want everything ready. Consider it done, my friend. Order room service. Get some sleep. By Tuesday, they won't even own the shirts on their backs. I hung up the phone. I lay back on the lumpy pillows. I closed my eyes. For the first time all day, the shivering stopped. I wasn't cold anymore. I was burning with the anticipation of Monday morning. The next 3 days were a masterclass in degradation viewed through the glowing screen of my smartphone. I stayed in the motel room eating vending machine crackers and drinking lukewarm tap water because I wanted to save the little cash I had on hand. I became a ghost watching my own life being dismantled in real time. My private investigator, a man named Russo, who I had kept on retainer for business audits, sent me updates every few hours. He was parked down the street from the estate. Saturday afternoon, a delivery truck arrived. They unloaded a massive curved screen television, a professional sound system, and gym equipment. Justin posted a photo on Instagram. He was holding a glass of my 1982 Bordeaux, a bottle I had been saving for my 75th birthday. The caption read, "New Era, King of the Castle, #blessed, #Winslow Estate." I zoomed in on the photo. He was wearing my smoking jacket, the one Beatrice had given me for our anniversary. He had his feet up on my desk. The disrespect was so visceral it felt like a physical blow. He wasn't just enjoying the wealth. He was erasing me. He was pissing on my territory to mark it as his own. Saturday night, the party started. Russo sent me video clips taken from the street. Cars lined the driveway, Porsches, Teslas, Range Rovers. The music was thumping so loud it rattled the windows. My neighbors, the respectable doctors and judges of Beacon Hill, would be horrified. Victoria was live streaming. I created an anonymous account to watch. She was in her mother's dressing room wearing Beatrice's pearl necklace. She was drunk. She was laughing into the camera holding a glass of champagne that was spilling onto the Persian rug. "Finally free," she slurred. "No more old people smelling up the place. We're going to renovate everything. Out with the old, in with the gold, right, baby?" She pulled Justin into the frame. He kissed her neck sloppily. "That's right. To us. To the 55 mil. To the 55 mil, she screamed. I watched my face illuminated by the blue light of the phone in the dark motel room. They were celebrating my death while I was still alive. They were feasting on the carcass of my marriage. Sunday morning brought a different kind of pain. I received a notification from my credit card company, the one card Victoria hadn't managed to cancel yet because it was a corporate card for my old firm. A charge attempted $250,000. Deposit for a Ferrari dealership. Denied. I smiled in the darkness. Justin was moving fast. He was spending the inheritance before the ink was dry. He was digging a hole so deep he would never climb out of it. Then came the text message from Victoria. It popped up on my screen at noon on Sunday. "Dad, I saw you trying to access the bank accounts. Stop it. It's pathetic. The accounts are frozen until probate clears. Don't try to come back here. I've told security that if you step foot on the driveway, you're a trespasser. I'll have you arrested. Don't embrace me. Just stay away and let us live." She was threatening me. She was threatening the man who had held her hand while she got stitches when she was 5. The man who had walked her down the aisle. She had completely dehumanized me. To her, I wasn't a father. I was a glitch in the system that needed to be deleted. I didn't reply. I didn't send a text begging for mercy. I didn't call. I gave her exactly what she wanted: silence. I let her believe that I was broken, that I was cowering in a corner, defeated. Silence is a weapon. When you go silent, people fill the void with their own arrogance. They get sloppy. They think the war is over, so they take off their armor. Monday morning arrived with a gray, steel-colored sky. I woke up at 6:00 a.m. I showered in the tiny fiberglass stall. I shaved with a disposable razor. I put on my funeral suit, which I had carefully hung up to keep the wrinkles out. I brushed the lint off the shoulders. I polished my shoes with a napkin. I looked in the mirror. I looked tired. My eyes were rimmed with red. My skin was pale, but my jaw was set. I looked like a man who had nothing left to lose, which made me the most dangerous man in the city. At 9:00 a.m. my phone buzzed. It was Leo. "The invite is sent," Leo said. "I told them to come to the office at 10:00 a.m. for the formal reading of the will and the transfer of assets. I told them to bring their IDs because we would be issuing checks." "Did they bite?" I asked. "Oh, they swallowed the hook, the line, and the sinker, Fred. Victoria asked if she could get a wire transfer instead of a check because she needs to clear a deposit on a vacation home in the Hamptons. They are coming." "I'll be there," I said. I checked out of the motel. I took a cab to the financial district. The skyscraper where Leo's firm was located was a glass needle piercing the clouds. I walked into the lobby, the marble floors clicking under my heels. The security guard nodded to me. He knew me. I took the elevator to the 40th floor. When I walked into the reception area, I saw them. Victoria and Justin were sitting on the leather sofa. They looked like royalty. Victoria was wearing a white suit, looking like she was about to christen a ship. Justin was wearing a new Rolex, probably put on a credit card. They were laughing, whispering to each other, looking at brochures for yachts. They didn't see me come in. I stood there for a moment, just watching them. The arrogance was palpable. It radiated off them like heat. They were so sure, so absolutely certain that the world belonged to them. Then Justin looked up. His smile vanished. He nudged Victoria. She looked at me. Her expression shifted from joy to annoyance. Not fear, annoyance. Like I was a fly that had landed on her lunch. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, standing up. "I told you to stay away. This meeting is for beneficiaries. That means me." "I was invited," I said calmly, walking past them toward the conference room doors. "Invited by who?" Justin sneered. "You're not getting a dime, old man. Beatrice made sure of that." "We'll see," I said. Just then the double doors opened. Leo Katz stood there, flanked by two junior associates. Leo didn't smile. He looked at Victoria and Justin with the cold, dead eyes of a shark who smells blood in the water. "Mr. and Mrs. Blake," Leo said, "and Mr. Winslow, please come in. We have a lot to get through." "Why is he here?" Victoria demanded, pointing a manicured finger at me. "I want him out. This is my inheritance. He has no rights." "Actually," Leo said, stepping aside to let us in, "he has every right. Now sit down, Victoria, and stop shouting. You're going to want to save your energy." We walked into the conference room. A long oak table stretched out before us with a view of the entire Boston Harbor. I sat at the head of the table. It was my usual seat. Victoria tried to protest, but Leo silenced her with a look. She sat to my right, Justin next to her. They sat close, a united front of greed. Leo sat at the opposite end. He placed a single thick red folder on the table. He clasped his hands. "Before we begin," Leo said, "I need to verify the events of the last 72 hours. Victoria, is it true that you removed your father from the family residence on Friday evening?" "I didn't remove him," Victoria scoffed. "I asked him to leave. It's my house, I have the right." "And is it true you confiscated his keys and blocked his access to the joint bank accounts?" He was spending irresponsibly. Justin lied smoothly. We were protecting the estate. Protecting the estate, Leo repeated, testing the words. Interesting choice of words. Since Friday, credit monitoring shows that you, Justin, attempted to put a deposit on a Ferrari and a Porsche. And you, Victoria, spent $40,000 at Saks Fifth Avenue yesterday. Is that correct? That's none of your business, Victoria snapped. It's my money. I can spend it how I want. Just read the damn will so we can get the funds released. I have a wire transfer pending. Leo looked at me. I gave him a slight nod. The signal. Very well, Leo said. He opened the red folder. You are referring to the last will and testament of Beatrice Winslow dated 5 years ago, the one that named you, Victoria, as the sole beneficiary of the $55 million estate. Yes, Victoria said, leaning forward, her eyes hungry. That one. There is a problem, Leo said softly. That will was revoked. The room went silent. You could hear the air conditioning hum. Revoked? Justin asked, his voice cracking. What do you mean revoked? I mean, Leo said, pulling out a new document, crisp and blue, that 6 months ago, after an internal audit revealed that someone we suspect you, Justin, had been siphoning money from Fred's retirement fund to gamble on cryptocurrency, Beatrice and Fred came to this office. They drafted a new will, a final will. Victoria turned pale. She looked at me. Dad, what did you do? I didn't do anything, I said, breaking my silence. Your mother did. She was heartbroken, Victoria. She realized that you didn't love us. You loved what we could give you, so she added a safety mechanism. Read it, Victoria whispered. Leo cleared his throat. I, Beatrice Winslow, leave my entire estate, including the Beacon Hill residence, the securities portfolio, and the textile holdings totaling approximately $55 million into the Winslow Family Trust. Victoria exhaled. Okay, trust. That's fine. I'm the beneficiary of the trust, right? You are the beneficiary, Leo confirmed. Victoria smirked at me. See, you scared me for a second. It's still mine. However, Leo continued, his voice raising slightly to cut her off. There is a condition. Clause 4, Section A, the caretaker clause. What? Justin asked. Leo read from the document. The beneficiary, Victoria Winslow, shall receive a monthly stipend from the trust provided that her father, Frederick Winslow, resides in the main family residence for the remainder of his natural life. Furthermore, Frederick Winslow is appointed as the sole trustee with absolute discretion over all disbursements. Victoria froze. He controls the money. He controls every penny, Leo said. You have to ask him for allowance, and he can say no. Justin looked like he was about to vomit. But we kicked him out. Ah, Leo said. That brings us to Clause 13, the forfeiture clause. Leo turned the page. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. If at any time Frederick Winslow is removed from the residence against his will or subjected to elder abuse, financial coercion, or emotional distress by the beneficiary, the beneficial interest of Victoria Winslow is immediately and irrevocably terminated. Leo looked up. He stared straight at Victoria. Terminated, meaning you get nothing. Zero. You're lying, Victoria screamed, standing up. You can't do that. We have video evidence, Leo said calmly. Justin, you were kind enough to post it on social media. We have footage of you throwing his clothes in the mud. We have the text messages threatening him. We have the bank logs of you locking him out. You triggered Clause 13 on Friday night. It's done. The trust has been dissolved as it pertains to you. So where does the money go? Justin asked, his voice a whisper. Clause 13, Section B, Leo read. In the event of forfeiture, the entire estate shall be liquidated and the proceeds donated to the Boston Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Leo closed the folder. Congratulations, Victoria. You just made the largest donation to cat and dog welfare in the history of Massachusetts. Now get out of my office. I sat in the dim light of the Starlight Motel room, the air conditioner rattling like a dying engine, and watched my life being dismantled one pixel at a time. My private investigator Russo was a man of few words, but excellent camera work. He had set up a long-range lens from a van parked across the street from the Winslow estate, and the live feed was beaming directly to my tablet. It was Saturday, the day after I had been evicted from my own home, the day after I had buried my wife. By all rights, the house on Beacon Hill should have been dark. It should have been a place of mourning, silent and respectful, perhaps a single light burning in the hallway to guide a wandering spirit home. But it wasn't. The house was ablaze with light. Every chandelier, every sconce, every landscape light was turned on full power, illuminating the wet cobblestones where my suitcases had sat just 24 hours earlier. They were throwing a party. Russo sent me a text message attached to a video file. The caption read simply, "They ordered 300 oysters and 5 cases of champagne." I pressed play. The video showed a catering van pulling up to the service entrance. Men in white coats were unloading crates of food trays of ice and bottles of liquor. I recognized the catering company. It was the same one Beatrice and I had used for our 40th anniversary party. The audacity was breathtaking. They were using my contact list, my vendors, and my money flow to celebrate my expulsion. I watched as guests began to arrive. These were not the people who had been at the funeral. These were not the family friends, the business partners, or the neighbors who had known Beatrice for decades. These were strangers. A parade of peacocks in flashy cars, young men with slicked back hair, and women in dresses that left nothing to the imagination. They were Justin's crowd. The hangers-on, the cryptocurrency gamblers, the people who mistook noise for class. They walked up my steps laughing, smoking on my porch, flicking ash onto the hydrangeas I had planted with my own hands. Then the camera zoomed in on the window of the dining room. The curtains were open. I saw Justin. He was standing at the head of the table, my table holding a bottle of wine. I squinted at the screen, my heart hammering a painful rhythm against my ribs. It wasn't just any wine. It was a Chateau Margaux 1996. Beatrice had bought a case of it in France. We had drunk a bottle on the night Victoria graduated college. We had drunk another when I retired. There were only 3 bottles left, saving them for a moment of supreme importance. Justin was holding it by the neck like a beer bottle. He wasn't decanting it. He wasn't letting it breathe. He was pouring it into red plastic solo cups that were scattered around the antique mahogany table. I watched him raise a plastic cup filled with $5,000 worth of vintage Bordeaux and chug it down as his friends cheered. It felt like a physical slap. He wasn't drinking the wine to enjoy it. He was drinking it to consume me. He was drinking it because he could. But the party was just the appetizer. The main course of their desecration arrived on Sunday morning. I had barely slept, my eyes gritty and sore, glued to the stream of images Russo provided. At 8 a.m., a construction dumpster was delivered to the driveway. It was a massive rusted steel beast that scraped deep gouges into the pavers as it was unloaded. I wondered what they were throwing away. Maybe old furniture. Maybe clearing out the attic. Then I saw 2 men in coveralls walking out the front door, carrying something large and wooden. It was my drafting table. I gasped, a raw, involuntary sound in the empty motel room. That table was not just a piece of furniture. It was where I had designed the skyline of this city. It was where I had drawn the plans for the hospital wing dedicated to Beatrice's mother. It was made of solid cherry wood scarred with the marks of my compass, and my pencils stained with coffee and ink from 10,000 late nights. The men didn't carry it gently. They didn't maneuver it. They dragged it to the dumpster and heaved it over the side. I heard the wood crack through the speakers of my tablet. It sounded like a bone breaking. Next came the books. My library. First editions of architectural history, monographs signed by the great masters, leather-bound volumes that Beatrice had collected for me over 40 years. They came out in garbage bags. I watched as they were tossed into the steel container, treating knowledge and history like common trash. They were gutting my sanctuary. Russo called me then. His voice was gravelly. "Mr. Winslow." I managed to get a directional microphone pointed at the porch. "You might want to hear this. Or maybe you don't. Send it," I said. The audio file arrived. It was Victoria's voice, shrill and excited. She was standing on the porch directing the workers. "Get all of it out," she was shouting. "Everything that smells like old man. I want this room stripped to the studs by tomorrow. The home theater guys are coming on Tuesday. I want an 80-inch screen on the north wall and stadium seating." "And the fireplace," a worker asked. "Brick it up," she said. "It's depressing. We want modern. We want sleek. Just get rid of his junk. Burn it if you have to." Junk. My life's work. My legacy. My memories. To her, it was just debris standing in the way of a movie screen. I closed my eyes and gripped the edge of the motel desk until my knuckles turned white. I didn't feel sadness anymore. The sadness had evaporated in the heat of a cold, white rage. They were erasing me. They were scrubbing Frederick Winslow from the face of the earth so they could inhabit the shell of his life without guilt. But Justin, I discovered later that afternoon, was not content with merely destroying the past. He was mortgaging the future. Russo sent me a series of photos taken in the parking lot of a strip mall about 5 miles from the estate. It was a place I knew well by reputation, a place where desperate men went when the banks said no. The photos showed Justin standing next to a black SUV. He was talking to a man I recognized from the court pages of the newspaper. A man known as Jimmy the Shark, a hard money lender who charged interest rates that would make a banker blush and enforced payments with a baseball bat. I zoomed in on the photos. Justin looked manic. He was sweating, his hands moving rapidly as he spoke. He was holding a thick envelope. In the next photo, he was signing a document on the hood of the SUV. I knew exactly what that was. It was a promissory note. Since he couldn't access the trust funds yet, thanks to the probate period and the banking freezes I had initiated, he was borrowing against his future inheritance. He was selling a golden egg he hadn't even collected yet. He took the envelope from the loan shark. It was thick with cash. He shook hands, got back into his car, and drove off. 2 hours later, a flatbed truck pulled up to the Winslow estate. On the back of it sat a bright yellow Ferrari and a black Porsche 911 GT3. They were brand new. The stickers were still in the windows. Justin ran out of the house like a child on Christmas morning. He was screaming with joy. He high-fived the delivery driver. He handed him a stack of cash from the envelope, the tip or perhaps the bribe for a Sunday delivery. He didn't buy them. He couldn't have bought them outright, not even with a loan shark's cash. He had put down massive, non-refundable cash deposits. He had leased them on predatory terms, promising to pay the full balance within 30 days when the big money came through. He was betting everything on a payday that was never going to come. I watched him jump into the Ferrari. He revved the engine, the sound echoing through the quiet Sunday streets of Beacon Hill like a gunshot. He tore out of the driveway, scraping the bottom of the car on the cobblestones, not caring, just needing to feel the speed, the power, the ownership. He drove onto the front lawn, spinning the tires, tearing up the grass Beatrice had nurtured for decades, leaving deep, muddy ruts in the pristine green. He got out and took a selfie on the hood, posting it immediately. I checked his social media. The caption read, "Started from the bottom, now we here. The Empire strikes back. #Winslow. Money, our Ferrari life." He tagged Victoria. She commented, "My king." It was grotesque. It was a caricature of wealth. They were acting like starving dogs let loose in a butcher shop, gorging themselves until they were sick. They had no concept of preservation, of stewardship, of respect. They only knew consumption. Victoria was not to be outdone. While Justin played with his cars, she was busy destroying her mother's reputation. She went live on social media again Sunday evening. She was in the master bedroom. My bedroom. She had gone through Beatrice's closet. She was holding up my wife's vintage Chanel suits, her silk scarves, the garments she had worn to meet presidents and artists. "Look at this, Rags," Victoria said to the camera, laughing. "Can you believe my mother wore this? It smells like mothballs and repression. Who wants it? I'm doing a giveaway. First person to comment gets this ugly jacket. I'm clearing out the energy. We need fresh vibes in here." She tossed a silk blouse onto the floor. A blouse I had bought Beatrice in Milan. "And don't worry about my dad," she said, answering a comment from a follower. "He's fine. He decided to move to a retirement community in Florida. He wanted to be with his own kind. He's happier there. We're just taking care of the house for him. It was too much work for his old hands." A lie. A smooth, easy lie to cover her cruelty. She painted herself as the benevolent caretaker, and me as the feeble old man who had been gently put out to pasture. She didn't mention the rain. She didn't mention the $500 in the mud. She didn't mention that I was currently eating a cup of instant noodles in a motel room that smelled of despair. I turned off the tablet. I had seen enough. The visual of my drafting table in the dumpster and the Ferrari on the lawn was burned into my retinas. The sound of my daughter laughing as she threw away her mother's clothes rang in my ears. I stood up and walked to the window of the motel. I looked out at the parking lot, at the neon sign buzzing in the darkness. They thought they had won. They thought the game was over. They were feasting on the carcass of the life Beatrice and I had built, picking the bones, clean drunk on wine they didn't earn, and driving cars they couldn't afford. They had insulted the memory of my wife. They had destroyed the sanctuary of my work. They had leveraged themselves to the hilt with criminals banking on a check that I was about to cancel. I picked up my phone and sent a text to Leo. They destroyed the office. They bought the cars. They borrowed money from Jimmy the Shark. Leo's reply came back instantly. "Good. That means they are extended. That means when the floor drops out, they won't just fall. They will shatter. Are you ready for tomorrow?" I looked at my reflection in the dark window. I didn't look like a victim anymore. I looked like the man who had fired corrupt contractors, the man who had stared down city planners, the man who had built a fortune from steel and stone. "I'm ready," I typed back. "Make sure the forfeiture documents are on top of the pile." I went to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark listening to the trucks on the highway, and for the first time in 3 days, I felt a sense of calm. It was the calm of the executioner the night before the hanging. They had had their party. They had danced on the grave. Now it was time to turn on the lights and show them the bill. My phone vibrated on the cheap laminate nightstand, dancing across the surface with a buzzing sound that grated on my nerves like a dentist's drill. It was Sunday night, the witching hour of my exile. The party at the estate had finally died down, leaving behind only the wreckage of my garden and the hangover of my daughter's conscience. Or perhaps that was giving her too much credit. I picked up the phone. The screen was a bright white glare in the darkness of the motel room. It was Victoria. The message was a block of text typed out with the frantic energy of someone trying to convince themselves they are in the right. "Dad," it read. "I've told security to change the codes on the front gate. Don't try to sneak in to get your pills or your books. If you step 1 foot on the property, I will call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. I mean it. This isn't your house anymore. It's time you accepted reality. Don't make me embarrass you in front of the neighbors." I stared at the words. Arrested. My own daughter, the child whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose college tuition I had paid in full, was threatening to put me in handcuffs for trying to enter the home I had built. A second message popped up immediately after. And don't bother calling Mom's friends or the lawyer to cry about how unfair this is. We know the law. We have the death certificate. The house is mine. The money is mine. You are just a guest who overstayed his welcome. Go find a condo in Florida. We'll send you a check for the moving truck once the account's clear. Goodbye. I didn't type a reply. I didn't even tap the screen to keep it awake. I just let it go black in my hand. It was tempting to respond. It was tempting to rage, to type out a furious paragraph telling her exactly what was waiting for her in Leonard's office the next morning. I wanted to tell her that she was standing on a trapdoor and I was holding the lever. But I didn't. I placed the phone face down on the table. Silence is a terrifying thing to a bully. When you argue back, you validate them. You tell them that their blows are landing, that you are hurt, that you are engaged in the fight. But when you say nothing, you become a void. You become the dark at the top of the stairs. They don't know if you are cowering in fear or loading a gun. They have to fill that silence with their own imagination, and usually their arrogance fills it with false security. Victoria and Justin interpreted my silence exactly as I hoped they would. To them, my lack of response was submission. It was the white flag of a feeble old man who had realized he was beaten. They thought I was sitting in this motel room broken and weeping, accepting my fate as the discarded patriarch. They thought the old lion had lost his teeth. This confidence was their fatal flaw. It was built on a foundation of ignorance so profound, it was almost impressive. You see, Victoria was operating on intelligence that was 5 years out of date. She was so sure of her victory because she had seen the will, or at least she had seen a will. 5 years ago, Beatrice and I had drafted a simple estate plan. We were getting older, Victoria was our only child, and despite her flaws, we loved her. That draft left everything to her outright. No strings attached. $55 million, the house, the stocks, the art. Victoria had found a copy of that draft in my study one Christmas when she was snooping for gifts. I remembered the day. She had come downstairs with a glow on her face, hugging us a little tighter, pouring us wine with a little more enthusiasm. She thought she had seen her future written in ink. She thought she just had to wait us out. She didn't know that the future is a living document. She didn't know about the cold Tuesday morning 6 months ago when I sat at my desk staring at a discrepancy in my retirement fund. $200,000 had vanished. It wasn't a banking error. It was a wire transfer to an offshore crypto exchange. The IP address traced back to the guest Wi-Fi network in our house. Justin's phone. I remembered the confrontation vividly. Justin had cried. He claimed it was a sure thing, an investment that would double our money in a week. He claimed he wanted to surprise us. He was lying. He had gambled it away on digital vapor. Beatrice had sat in the armchair, her face gray, listening to her son-in-law lie to her face. She didn't scream. She just looked at him with a profound disappointment that was worse than anger. She realized then that he was a parasite, and that Victoria, blinded by his charm, or perhaps just as greedy, was his willing host. That afternoon, we went to see Leo. We didn't tell Victoria. We didn't want a war while Beatrice was sick. We just quietly, methodically rewrote history. We created the trust. We inserted the clauses. We built a fortress around our legacy that they couldn't breach. Victoria didn't know any of this. She was playing a game with a rulebook that had been thrown in the shredder 6 months ago. My phone buzzed again. It was Justin this time. He had sent a screenshot of a Zillow listing for a 1-bedroom apartment in a rundown part of Dorchester. "Check this out, Fred," he wrote. "It's in your price range. Ground floor, so you won't break a hip. We're doing you a favor, really. You'll be happier with people your own speed." He added a thumbs-up emoji. I looked at the timestamp. 3:00 a.m. He was awake, high on adrenaline, and probably the expensive scotch from my liquor cabinet. He was feeling invincible. He was poking the bear because he thought the bear was already dead. I stood up and walked to the bathroom sink. I splashed cold water on my face. I looked at the man in the mirror. I didn't see a victim. I saw a man who had been patient for too long. I saw a man who had let love blind him to the rot in his own house. But the rot was cut out now. The grief for my wife was still there, a heavy stone in my gut. But the grief for my daughter was gone. She had killed it herself, text message by text message. I went back to the bed and lay down staring at the ceiling. I imagined the scene in my house right now. They would be sleeping in the master suite, my bed. They would be dreaming of yachts and penthouses. They would be secure in the knowledge that the old man was dealt with, silenced by fear and poverty. They had no idea that the silence they were enjoying wasn't the silence of surrender. It was the silence of a fuse burning down. Morning came slowly, the sun creeping through the thin curtains of the motel room. I dressed slowly, methodically. I put on my best suit, a charcoal gray three-piece that Beatrice had picked out for me in London. It was impeccable. I tied my tie with steady hands. I put my cufflinks in. Gold knots. A gift from my father. I checked my phone one last time. No new messages. They were probably sleeping in, exhausted from their victory lap. They would wake up late, drink coffee from my china, and dress for the meeting with Leo, expecting to sign a few papers and walk out $55 million richer. They would walk into that conference room, with their heads held high, stepping over the corpse of their father without a second glance. I grabbed my room key and my wallet. I didn't take the suitcases. I wouldn't need them where I was going. I walked out into the cool morning air. The rain had stopped. The sky was a pale, hard blue. I hailed a cab. Where to, the driver asked. One International Place, I said. The law offices of Katz and Associates. The driver pulled out onto the highway. I watched the city skyline approach. It was a city I had helped build, a city of steel and stone and consequences. I wasn't Fred the retired architect anymore. I wasn't Dad. I wasn't the old man. I was the trustee, and rent was due. The lobby of Katz and Associates was a fortress of polished marble and hushed whispers, the kind of place where fortunes were quietly dissected and reassembled. I stepped out of the elevator onto the 40th floor, my footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. The receptionist, a young woman with glasses who had known me for years, looked up. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw me, likely noticing the subtle weariness etched into my features, the funeral suit I had been wearing for days. Mr. Winslow, she said, her voice soft. Mr. Katz is expecting you. Go right in. I walked down the long corridor lined with abstract art. The silence of the office, a stark contrast to the cacophony of greed I had been witnessing from afar. Leo's office was at the end, a corner suite overlooking the harbor. The door was open. Leo was standing by the window looking out at the gray water. He turned when I entered. He didn't offer a platitude or a sympathetic smile. He just nodded, his expression grim. Fred, he said, sit down. I sat in one of the leather armchairs facing his massive desk. Leo sat opposite me, opening a thick file folder. Inside were documents I recognized, drafts, emails, financial statements, and one document in particular, bound in blue paper, that was the centerpiece of our strategy. How are you holding up? Leo asked, his eyes scanning my face. I'm tired, Leo, I admitted, but I'm ready. Good, Leo said, because they're coming. I sent the invitation an hour ago. They confirmed receipt within 3 minutes. They think they're coming to collect a check. They have no idea, I said. No, Leo agreed. They don't. He tapped the blue document. Beatrice knew Fred. She knew long before you did. I looked at the document. It was the last will and testament of Beatrice Winslow, dated 6 months prior. The memory of that day washed over me, sharp and painful. Beatrice had been sick for a while, but her mind remained razor-sharp until the end. She had seen things I had missed, blinded by my desire to keep the peace, to keep the family together. She had seen the way Justin looked at our art collection, not with appreciation, but with appraisal. She had seen the way Victoria's calls became less frequent unless she needed something. She told me, I said, my voice thick. She told me they were vultures. I told her she was being harsh. She wasn't harsh, Leo said. She was observant, and she was protective. That's why we wrote this. He opened the will to a specific page. Clause 4, the caretaker clause, and Clause 13, the forfeiture clause. I read the words again, even though I knew them by heart. The beneficiary Victoria Winslow shall receive a monthly stipend, provided that her father Frederick Winslow resides in the main family residence. Frederick Winslow is appointed as the sole trustee. It's a masterpiece, Leo, I said. But are you sure it will hold up? They'll contest it. They'll say she was unduly influenced, that she wasn't of sound mind. Leo leaned back, steepled his fingers. Let them try. We have video evidence of her signing it. We have 2 independent psychiatrists who evaluated her capacity that same morning. We have emails from her explicitly stating her intentions. And we have the audit trail of Justin's theft. He pulled out another document, a forensic accounting report. $200,000, Fred, siphoned from your retirement account, traced directly to an offshore crypto exchange registered to a shell company Justin set up. Beatrice found this. She brought it to me. I stared at the numbers. My wife had been fighting a battle on 2 fronts against her illness and against the betrayal of her own family, and she had done it silently to protect me. She didn't want to break your heart, Leo said gently. She knew how much you wanted to believe in them, so she built a safety net instead. He flipped to another page. This is the kicker. Clause 13. If at any time Frederick Winslow is removed from the residence against his will, the beneficial interest of Victoria Winslow is immediately and irrevocably terminated. They triggered it, I said. Friday night. They did more than trigger it, Leo said. They danced on the trigger. They live-streamed themselves pulling the trigger. We have the footage, Fred. We have the text messages. We have the police report you didn't file but could have. It's airtight. He closed the file. The beauty of this is that they think they've won. They think the silence from us is defeat. They're coming in here tomorrow expecting a coronation. Instead, they're walking into an execution. I looked out the window. The city looked cold and different. I never wanted this, Leo. I wanted a daughter who loved me. I wanted a son-in-law who respected me. I wanted to grow old in my house with my family around me. I know, Leo said. But you can't buy love, Fred. And you can't teach integrity to people who don't have it. Beatrice knew that. Now you know it too. He stood up and walked over to a small bar in the corner of the office. He poured 2 glasses of scotch. He handed one to me. To Beatrice, he said. To Beatrice, I replied. We drank. The scotch burned a welcome heat in my cold chest. So, Leo said, sitting back down. Here's the play. Tomorrow at 10:00 a.m. They come in. We let them talk. We let them dig their hole. We let them demand the money. We let them show their true colors to the very end. And then we drop the hammer, I finished. We drop the hammer, Leo agreed. We read the will. We show them the forfeiture clause. We show them the evidence of the trigger event. And then we tell them the money is gone. Gone, I repeated. To the cats and dogs. Every penny. Leo smiled a shark's smile. Beatrice loved animals. She said they were more loyal than people. She was right. He picked up a piece of paper from his desk. I've already drafted the transfer order. The moment they walk out of this office tomorrow, the funds will be wired to the MS. It's irrevocable. I nodded. It was done. The decision had been made 6 months ago by a woman who saw the future more clearly than I did. I was just the instrument of her will. What about the house? I asked. The house stays in the trust, Leo said. You have a life estate. You can live there until you die. After that, well, the MSPCA gets that too, unless you decide to sell it. I'm not selling, I said. That house is Beatrice. I'm going to live there. I'm going to restore my office. I'm going to replant the garden, and I'm going to enjoy the silence. Leo looked at me. Are you sure you're ready for this, Fred? It's going to be brutal. Victoria, she's going to lose her mind. She lost her mind a long time ago, Leo, I said. When she chose money over her father. When she chose a con man over her family. I'm just showing her the bill. Okay, Leo said. Then get some rest. You look like hell. I feel like hell, I said. But tomorrow I'm going to feel a lot better. I stood up to leave. Leo walked me to the door. One more thing, he said. I have a little surprise for Justin. Oh. I did a little digging into his investments, Leo said. Turns out, he's not just a bad gambler. He's a fraud. He's been soliciting investors for a hedge fund that doesn't exist, using the Winslow name to open doors. My jaw tightened. He used our name. He did. And I've already forwarded the file to the SEC and the district attorney. They're very interested. There might be some additional guests waiting in the lobby tomorrow. I looked at Leo, my friend, my protector. You're a good man, Leo. I'm a lawyer, Fred. He grinned. We're not good men. We're just necessary evils. Go get some sleep. I left the office and walked back out into the city. The wind had picked up, biting and cold, but I didn't feel it. I felt armor plating itself around my soul. I hailed a cab back to the motel. As I watched the city pass by, I thought about Beatrice. I thought about the night we met at a gallery opening in Back Bay. She was wearing a blue dress. She had laughed at my tie. She had been the light of my life. And tomorrow I was going to honor her memory by burning down the parasites who had tried to extinguish that light. Back in the motel room, I checked my messages. Nothing from Victoria. Nothing from Justin. They were silent, confident in their victory. They were probably picking out outfits for the meeting, deciding which shade of black looked most beneficiary chic. I took out the blue suit I planned to wear. I checked the buttons. I polished my shoes again. I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to look like the CEO of Winslow Industries, not the discarded father. I lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The events of the last few days played out in my mind like a film loop. The rain, the suitcases, the laughter, the destruction of my office, the Ferrari on the lawn, the insults. Go die somewhere else, Dad. Those words echoed in the silence. They were the fuel for the fire I was about to light. I closed my eyes and whispered into the darkness. I'm not dying anywhere, Victoria. I'm coming home. The night passed slowly, the hours dragging their feet. But finally the sun rose. It was Tuesday, Judgment Day. I got up dressed and looked at myself in the mirror. The man looking back was hard. His eyes were flint. His mouth was a thin line. He was ready. I left the motel key on the dresser. I walked out into the morning light. I didn't look back at the Starlight Motel. It had been a purgatory, a waiting room for the damned. But I had served my time. I took a cab to Leo's office. I arrived at 9:45 a.m. I took my seat in the reception area, the same leather sofa where I would soon see them celebrating. I waited. At 9:55 a.m., the elevator doors opened. Victoria and Justin walked out. They were glowing. Victoria was wearing white, a color of purity and new beginnings, oblivious to the irony. Justin was wearing a suit that cost more than my first house. They were holding hands. They were smiling. They didn't see me at first. They walked straight to the receptionist. We're here for the meeting with Mr. Katz, Victoria announced, her voice ringing with entitlement. Mr. and Mrs. Blake, the beneficiaries. The receptionist looked at them, then looked at me. She didn't smile. Mr. Katz is ready for you, she said. And Mr. Winslow is already here. They turned. They saw me. The smiles faltered, then hardened into sneers. What are you doing here? Victoria asked, her voice dripping with disdain. I was invited, I said, standing up. Shall we? And together we walked into the lion's den. We walked down the corridor toward the main conference room, a trio bound by blood and separated by a chasm of betrayal so wide it could swallow the building whole. Victoria walked a half step ahead of me, her white heels clicking a sharp, aggressive rhythm on the marble floor. She didn't hold the door for me. She didn't check to see if I was keeping up. She simply marched toward her perceived destiny with the tunnel vision of a predator locking onto its prey. Justin walked beside her, whispering in her ear, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. He looked around the law office, not with respect, but with the appraising sneer of a man measuring drapes he intended to replace. When we entered the boardroom, the sheer size of the space seemed to inflate their egos even further. It was a room designed to intimidate, with a table long enough to land a plane on and floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Boston Harbor. Leo was not there yet. His assistant, a young man named David, was setting out carafes of water and notepads. Victoria threw her designer bag onto the table with a heavy thud. It was a statement. She claimed the room. She sat down in the chair directly to the right of the head of the table, the seat traditionally reserved for the guest of honor. Justin sat next to her, loosening his tie as if he had just finished a hard day of manual labor, rather than a morning of spending money he didn't have. I pulled out the chair opposite them. I moved slowly, deliberately, playing the part of the defeated old man they believed me to be. I sat down and folded my hands on the table. They didn't look at me. They were too busy constructing their new reality. This view is decent, Justin said, leaning back and putting his feet on the crossbar of the chair. But the office needs updating. When we move our assets here, we should tell Katz to modernize. Maybe some glass walls. This wood is too heavy. It feels like a library. We aren't keeping our assets here, Justin, Victoria snapped, pulling a compact mirror from her purse to check her lipstick. We're moving everything to that private wealth management firm in New York, the one your friend recommended. They know how to handle real money. Katz is just a probate lawyer. He's small time. I listened, my face a mask of impassive calm. They were already firing my lawyer. They were already moving $55 million they had never earned into the hands of whatever shark Justin had met at a poker table. Can we get some coffee? Justin barked at David, the assistant. And not the drip stuff. Espresso, double shot. David looked at me. I gave him a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of my head. David nodded and left the room, leaving the door slightly ajar. So Victoria said, finally turning her gaze toward me. Her eyes were cold, devoid of the warmth I had seen in them when she was a child. Since you decided to crash this meeting, we might as well get the logistics out of the way. We didn't want to discuss this until the check cleared, but since you're here, we have found a place for you. She reached into her oversized tote bag and pulled out a glossy brochure. She slid it across the polished oak table. It spun and came to a stop in front of me. The cover featured a generic photo of elderly people sitting in wheelchairs staring blankly at a television. The title read, Shady Maples Senior Living and Memory Care. I didn't pick it up. I just looked at it. It's in Worcester, she said. It's about an hour drive, so it's out of the city traffic. It's quiet. Worcester, I repeated. An hour away. It's very affordable, Justin chimed in. We looked at the numbers. The places in Boston are extortionate. $5,000–6,000 a month just for a room, it's robbery. Shady Maples is $2,000 a month, all-inclusive. Meals, laundry, everything. $2,000 a month, I said softly. It's a shared room, Victoria added quickly, as if that were a selling point. You'll have a roommate. It's better for socialization. You won't be lonely. They have bingo on Tuesdays and a van that takes you to the mall once a month. I looked at the brochure again. I knew Shady Maples. It was a facility that had been cited by the state twice in the last 5 years for health code violations. It was a warehouse for the forgotten, a place where people went to wait for the end in beige hallways that smelled of bleach and despair. "You want to put me in a shared room in Worcester," I said, "while you live in the Beacon Hill estate. We have a lifestyle to maintain, Dad." Victoria sighed as if explaining economics to a toddler. "The estate costs a fortune to run. Taxes, heating, landscaping. We can't bleed money paying for a luxury apartment for you when you don't even know what day it is half the time." "I don't know what day it is," I asked. Justin laughed. It was a cruel, sharp sound. "Come on, Fred. You've been slipping. We've all seen it. Leaving lights on, forgetting names. It's better this way. Shady Maples has a lockdown unit. You'll be safe. You won't wander off." They were building the narrative right in front of me, gaslighting me in real time. They needed me to be incompetent, so they wouldn't have to feel guilty about discarding me. If I was senile, then locking me away was an act of mercy, not malice. "We already paid the deposit," Victoria said. "The van is coming to pick you up from the motel at noon. That's why we needed the meeting to wrap up quickly. You need to go pack your things." They had brought a transport van. They weren't even going to drive me themselves. They were shipping me like a package. "And the house?" I asked. "We're gutting it," Justin said, his eyes lighting up. "We're going open concept, knocking down all those stuffy walls. The library is gone. We're putting in a glass staircase. It's going to be a showpiece. We're going to be on the cover of Architectural Digest." I felt a vein throb in my temple. Beatrice loved that library. She had read every book on those shelves. "You're erasing your mother," I said to Victoria. "I'm updating," she corrected. Mom had terrible taste. It was all so heavy, so old. We're young. We're vibrant. We need a space that reflects our status. Status. The word hung in the air, heavy with irony. They had no status. They had debt and delusions. They were sitting in a borrowed office wearing clothes bought on credit planning, the destruction of a legacy they hadn't built, all while condemning the architect of that legacy to a facility that served powdered eggs. I picked up the brochure. I opened it. I pretended to read the list of amenities. "Communal dining," I read aloud. "Scheduled bath times. No personal furniture allowed." "It's for hygiene," Victoria said dismissively. "You don't need your old chair. It's dusty." I looked up at them. I wanted to remember this moment. I wanted to burn it into my memory so that later, when the pleading started, when the tears came, I wouldn't waver. I wanted to remember the casual way Justin checked his reflection in his watch face while discussing my imprisonment. I wanted to remember the way Victoria couldn't look me in the eye, focusing instead on the invisible dust on the table. "You seem very confident," I said. "We're realistic," Justin said. "The money is coming today. 55 million. Do you know what kind of interest that generates just sitting in a low-yield bond? We're set for life, Fred. And we're generous. We're paying for your care. Most kids would just leave you on the street." "Generous," I repeated. "You threw my clothes in the mud 3 days ago." "That was a wake-up call," Victoria said. "You needed to understand the new hierarchy. You needed to understand that you aren't the head of this family anymore." "I am. I am the Winslow heir. You married into it. I was born into it." There it was. The core of the rot. The entitlement. She believed that DNA was a receipt for payment. She believed that because she carried the blood, she deserved the sweat. The door to the conference room opened. Leo walked in. He was carrying the red folder and the blue document. He looked at me, then at them. He didn't smile. He walked to the head of the table and stood there, looming over them. "Good morning," Leo said. His voice was deep, resonant, the voice of a judge passing sentence. "It's about time," Justin said, standing up and extending a hand that Leo ignored. We've been waiting 20 minutes. Time is money, cats. Sit down, Justin, Leo said. Justin blinked, confused by the tone, but he sat. Leo placed the files on the table. He looked at the brochure for Shady Maples that was still resting near my hand. He picked it up. He read the cover. He looked at Victoria. Shady Maples, Leo asked. It's a good facility, Victoria said defensively. It's a dump, Leo said, tossing the brochure into the wastebasket in the corner. It landed with a soft thud. And it won't be necessary. What do you mean? Victoria asked, her voice sharpening. He has to live somewhere. He can't live with us. No, Leo said, taking his seat. He certainly can't live with you. But we'll get to that. First, let's talk about the $55 million you've already spent in your heads. Victoria smiled, a shark-like baring of teeth. Just give me the papers to sign, Leo. I have a wire transfer to authorize. Leo opened the red folder. He looked at me. I gave him a slight nod. Let the show begin. The silence in the boardroom was absolute, the kind of heavy, pressurized quiet that precedes a natural disaster. Victoria was tapping her manicured nails on the mahogany table, a staccato rhythm of impatience. Justin was leaning back in his chair, already spending the millions in his head, a smug grin plastered on his face. They were radiating victory. They had the house, they had the cars, they had the narrative. All they needed was the signature. Leo sat at the head of the table, his face unreadable. He opened the red folder with a deliberate slowness that made Victoria twitch. He smoothed the first page of the document, then looked up at them over the rim of his reading glasses. Before we proceed with the disbursement, Leo said, his voice calm and professional. I need to clarify the legal structure of the estate. There seems to be a significant misunderstanding regarding the nature of the inheritance. Victoria scoffed, rolling her eyes. Misunderstanding? There's no misunderstanding, Leo. My mother left everything to me. I'm the only child. It's simple probate. Just give me the check so we can get out of here. I have a contractor meeting at 2. Leo didn't blink. He just turned the page. Actually, Victoria, it is not simple probate. And your mother did not leave everything to you directly. Justin stopped swinging in his chair. He sat up, his brow furrowing. What do you mean, not directly? Leo pulled a single sheet of paper from the file and slid it across the table toward them. It was a summary of the trust structure. Beatrice Winslow was a very intelligent woman, Leo began. She understood that wealth without protection is vulnerable. Vulnerable to market fluctuations, vulnerable to taxes, and vulnerable to poor decision-making. He let the phrase hang in the air for a moment, his eyes drifting briefly to Justin's new Rolex. Therefore, 6 months ago, Beatrice established the Winslow Family Preservation Trust. All assets, including the Beacon Hill property, the investment portfolios, and the textile holdings were transferred into this trust prior to her death. Victoria snatched the paper, scanning it frantically. Okay, fine. A trust. That's just for tax purposes, right? I'm the beneficiary. It says right here. Primary beneficiary, Victoria Winslow. So what's the problem? I get the money from the trust. It's the same thing. Not exactly, Leo said. He leaned forward, clasping his hands on the table. A trust has 2 key components, Victoria. The beneficiary who benefits from the assets, and the trustee who controls the assets. He paused. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Beatrice appointed a single, irrevocable trustee with absolute discretion over all distributions, investments, and liquidation of assets. Justin looked at Victoria, then back at Leo. Who is the trustee? Is it a bank? Because we can fire a bank. My buddy knows a guy at JP Morgan who can take over. Leo smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a trap snapping shut. No, Justin. It is not a bank. Beatrice wanted someone who understood the family. Someone with integrity. Someone she trusted with her life. Leo turned his head and looked directly at me. The sole trustee of the Winslow Family Preservation Trust is Frederick Winslow. For a moment, nobody moved. It was as if Leo had spoken in a foreign language. Victoria stared at me, her mouth slightly open, her brain struggling to process the information. Justin just blinked, his face going slack. "Me," Victoria whispered. "Him, but he's old. We kicked him out." "Exactly," Leo said. "And that brings us to the operational clauses of the trust." He opened the blue document again and began to read aloud. Clause 4, Section A, the Discretionary Distribution Clause. The trustee shall have the sole and absolute authority to determine the amount and frequency of any distributions to the beneficiary. The trustee may, at his discretion, withhold distributions for any reason, including, but not limited to, concerns about the beneficiary's financial maturity, spendthrift tendencies, or association with individuals of questionable character. Leo looked up. Questionable character. Beatrice was very specific about that phrasing. Justin's face flushed a deep, angry red. He slammed his hand on the table. "This is bullshit. You forged this. Beatrice wouldn't do this. She loved Victoria." "She did love Victoria," I said, speaking for the first time since we sat down. My voice was steady, stronger than it had been in years. "She loved her enough to protect her from you, Justin, and from herself." "You stay out of this, old man," Justin shouted, standing up. "Sit down," Leo barked. The authority in his voice cracked like a whip. Justin froze, then slowly sank back into his chair. "I'm not finished," Leo said. "There is more. Clause 4, Section B, the residency requirement." Victoria looked like she was going to be sick. "Residency requirement, or?" Leo nodded. "In order for the beneficiary to be eligible for any monthly stipend, not the lump sum, Victoria just a stipend, the trustee must maintain primary residence in the Beacon Hill estate. If the trustee is unable to reside in the home due to health, the trust will pay for his care at a facility of his choosing. If, however, the trustee is prevented from residing in the home by the actions of the beneficiary," Leo let the sentence trail off. He didn't need to finish it. The implication was hanging over them like a guillotine blade. "You mean—" Victoria stammered, her voice trembling. "You mean I can't live there without him?" "I mean," Leo corrected, "that he owns the house. He controls the house. You live there at his pleasure. He can evict you. He can sell it. He can burn it to the ground if he wants to. And if you try to stop him, if you try to lock him out, the trust freezes, completely." Victoria turned to me. Her eyes were wide, panicked. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the terrified realization that she had just tried to evict her own landlord. "Dad," she said, her voice wavering, "you wouldn't do that. We were just stressed. The funeral. It was a lot. We didn't mean it. We can work this out. You can have your room back. We'll move the home theater to the basement." I looked at her. I looked at the daughter who had thrown $500 in the mud and told me to go die. I didn't see my little girl anymore. I saw a stranger. "It's too late for that, Victoria," I said. Leo cleared his throat. "Which brings us to the final matter. The actions of the last 72 hours. He pulled out a tablet and placed it on the table. He tapped the screen. A video started playing. It was the footage from Friday night. Victoria standing on the porch, arms crossed. Justin filming me. My suitcases in the rain. "Go die somewhere else, Dad." The audio was crisp, clear, undeniable. Victoria stared at the screen, her face pale. Justin looked away, unable to watch his own cruelty played back to him. "Clause 13. Leo said softly. "The forfeiture clause." He didn't read it this time. He just summarized it. "If the beneficiary commits any act of emotional or physical abuse against the trustee, or attempts to deprive the trustee of his residence, the beneficiary forfeits all rights to the trust, all of them, permanently. Victoria made a sound like a wounded animal. No. No, you can't. That's entrapment. You let us do it. You didn't stop us. We didn't let you do anything. Victoria, I said, you chose to do it. You chose to be cruel. You chose to be greedy. You thought I was weak. You thought I was stupid. You thought you could just throw me away like a broken toy. I stood up. I walked over to the window and looked out at the harbor. I built that house, I said, my back to them. I restored every brick. I planted every tree. I filled it with love and memories. And you treated it like a piggy bank. You treated me like an inconvenience. I turned back to face them. You wanted the money, Victoria. You wanted the power. Well, now you know where it really lies. It lies with the person who holds the pen. And I am holding the pen. Justin looked at Leo, desperation creeping into his eyes. Is this real? Can he really do this? It is real, Leo said. It is legal, it is binding, and it is done, so we get nothing. Justin asked, his voice barely a whisper. 5 million, the cars. The boat I ordered. The trust will not pay for your cars, Justin, Leo said. The trust will not pay for your boat. The trust will not pay for your debts. Debts, Victoria asked, looking at her husband. What debts? Leo smiled. Ah. You didn't tell her, Justin, about the loan shark, about the promissory note you signed on Sunday, pledging assets you didn't own. Victoria turned to Justin. Her eyes were wide with horror. You borrowed money from a loan shark. I thought the money was coming today. Justin stammered. It was a bridge loan. I was going to pay it back this afternoon. And the 200,000 from 6 months ago, Leo asked. The retirement fund theft, Victoria gasped. You stole from Dad. He told me he was investing it, Victoria screamed. He said it was a sure thing. It's gone, Victoria, I said. He gambled it away. Just like he gambled your inheritance away this weekend. The room descended into chaos. Victoria was screaming at Justin. Justin was shouting excuses. They were turning on each other, the rats on the sinking ship eating their own. I watched them for a moment, feeling a deep, hollow sadness. This was my legacy. This shouting match. This greed. This hatred. Leo stood up. That's enough. The room fell silent. The trust has been dissolved as it pertains to you, Victoria, Leo said. The forfeiture is triggered. The assets are being transferred as we speak. Transferred where? Victoria asked, tears streaming down her face. Where is the money going? To the dogs, I said. What though? Leo clarified. The Massachusetts Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Beatrice loved animals. She said they were the only creatures who never betrayed her. $55 million, Victoria whispered. To cats, dogs, horses, rabbits, Leo listed. Anyone who needs a home. Anyone who has been abandoned. Unlike your father, they will be taken care of. But what about us? Justin asked. We have bills. We have the lease on the Ferrari. We have the party. That, Leo said, closing the red folder, sounds like a personal problem. He pressed a button on his intercom. Security to the conference room, please. Victoria looked at me. Her eyes were pleading. Dad, please. You can't let this happen. I'm your daughter. I'm all you have. I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the fear. I saw the regret. But I didn't see love. I saw a woman who was sorry she got caught. I saw a woman who was terrified of being poor. You're not all I have, Victoria, I said. I have my dignity. I have my memories. and I have a house full of cats to visit." Two security guards walked into the room. "Escort Mr. and Mrs. Blake out of the building," Leo said, "and make sure they don't take the pens." Victoria lunged at me. "Not to hug me, to claw at me, to hurt me." "You old bastard," she screamed. "I hate you. I hope you die alone." The guards grabbed her arms. They dragged her backward. She was kicking and screaming a tantrum of epic proportions. Justin followed her head down, defeated, already pulling out his phone, probably trying to call the Ferrari dealership to beg for his deposit back. I watched them go. I watched the doors close behind them. The silence returned to the room. I sat back down. I felt heavy. I felt old. But I also felt clean. "It's done," Leo said softly. "It's done," I agreed. Leo poured me a glass of water. "Are you okay?" "I will be," I said. "Eventually." So Leo said, opening a new file. "Now that the unpleasantness is over, let's talk about the renovation of your library. I know a very good contractor who specializes in historical restoration." I smiled. It was a weak smile, but it was real. "I'd like that, Leo. I'd like that very much." And maybe I added, looking at the empty chairs where my daughter and her husband had sat. "Maybe we can get a dog." "A big one," Leo agreed. "To guard the gate." "Yes," I said. "A big one." I took a sip of water. The war was over. The enemy had been routed. The castle was safe. And for the first time in a long time, the king could finally rest. Victoria tried to laugh. It was a wet, jagged sound that scraped against the silence of the conference room. She looked at me then, at Leo, her eyes darting back and forth like a trapped animal looking for a gap in the fence. As she smoothed her white skirt with trembling hands, trying to summon the ghost of her former arrogance, trying to pretend that the ground wasn't crumbling beneath her feet. "Dad," she said, her voice pitching up into a register of forced gaiety. "This is a joke, right? It is a test. You and Leo are trying to teach me a lesson about respecting my elders." "Okay." Message received. "I get it. I was a brat. I was stressed. The funeral, the grief, it made me crazy. But we can fix this. You can come home. You can have the master suite. Justin and I will take the guest wing. We will fire the contractors. We will put the library back exactly how it was. Just tell Leo to stop reading these ridiculous clauses." She reached across the table, her hand hovering near mine, trying to bridge the chasm she had dug with insults and eviction notices. She wanted me to take her hand. She wanted me to be the father I had always been, the one who fixed things, the one who smoothed over the cracks, the one who wrote the checks. I looked at her hand. I saw the diamond ring on her finger, bought with credit she couldn't pay back. I saw the tremor in her wrist. I didn't take her hand. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms over my chest. "It is not a test, Victoria," I said softly. "And it is certainly not a joke." Leo didn't look up from the file. He simply reached into his briefcase and pulled out a tablet. He placed it in the center of the massive oak table facing Victoria and Justin. The screen was black, a dark mirror reflecting their terrified faces. "You claim," Leo said, his voice devoid of emotion, "that your actions on Friday night were a result of stress. You claim that you merely asked your father to leave. You claim that you intend to care for him." Leo tapped the screen. The video began to play. It was the footage Justin had taken. The footage he had laughed about. The footage he had posted to his private social media story to brag to his friends. The audio filled the room, crisp and undeniable. The sound of the rain hitting the pavement. The sound of my suitcases being dragged across the wet stones. And then Victoria's voice. Sharp, cruel. "Go die somewhere else, Dad. You are useless now." I watched Victoria's face as she watched herself. Her skin turned the color of old parchment. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She stared at the screen as if she were watching a stranger, a monster wearing her face. Then Justin's voice on the recording. Make sure you get a shot of him picking up the cash. The video showed me standing in the rain, looking down at the crumpled bills in the mud. It showed the door slamming in my face. It showed the lock clicking shut. Leo let the video play to the very end until the screen went black again. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. It was the silence of a grave. Clause 13. Leo said. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His voice was a sledgehammer. He flipped to the final page of the blue document. The forfeiture clause. He began to read, and every word was a nail in the coffin of their future. In the event that the trustee Frederick Winslow is forcibly removed from the primary residence, denied access to his home, or subjected to any form of emotional, physical, or financial abuse by the beneficiary, the trust shall be immediately and irrevocably dissolved as it pertains to said beneficiary. Victoria began to shake. Her head was shaking back and forth in a jerky, rhythmic motion of denial. No, she whispered. No, you can't. Mom wouldn't. Mom wouldn't do that to me. Upon the activation of this clause, Leo continued relentless the entirety of the trust assets, including the real estate, the investment portfolio, and all liquid cash holdings totaling approximately $55 million shall be stripped from the beneficiary. Stripped. The word hung in the air. Justin made a sound like he had been punched in the stomach. He slumped forward, gripping the edge of the table, his knuckles white. Where does it go? He wheezed. If she doesn't get it, who gets it? It has to go somewhere. Does it go to you, Fred? Because we can sue you. We can sue you for undue influence. Leo closed the folder. The snap of the binder was loud final. It does not go to Fred, Leo said. Beatrice was very specific. She wanted to ensure that if her daughter proved to be lacking in humanity, the money would go to creatures capable of unconditional love. He picked up a transfer order that was already stamped and notarized. The entirety of the estate has been designated to the Massachusetts Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, specifically for the construction of a new shelter wing and a perpetual endowment for the care of abandoned senior dogs. There was a moment of absolute stunned comprehension. $55 million, Victoria breathed. To dogs and cats, Leo added helpfully. Beatrice was fond of cats. You gave my inheritance to a dog pound, Victoria screamed. The scream tore out of her throat, raw and primal. She stood up, knocking her chair over backward. It hit the floor with a crash. You insane old man! You stole my life! That money is mine! It's mine! She lunged across the table, her hands clawed, reaching for me. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just watched her. Sit down, Leo shouted. Justin grabbed Victoria's arm and yanked her back, but he wasn't doing it to protect me. He was doing it because he was in shock. He was doing it because the math in his head had just crashed and burned. He looked at me, his eyes wide, vacant. It's gone, he asked. It's all gone. It was never yours, Justin, I said. You just spent it before you earned it. Justin turned to Victoria. He looked at her with a mixture of horror and loathing that I had never seen before. The mask of the loving husband, the partner in crime, dissolved instantly. You told me it was a sure thing, Justin hissed. Victoria spun on him. Me. You were the one who told me to kick him out. You said he was a liability. You said we needed the space for your stupid home theater. I said we needed him gone, Justin shouted back. I didn't say film it. I didn't say abuse him. You're the one who threw the money in the mud. You triggered the clause, you stupid cow. The insult hung in the air, ugly and sharp. Victoria recoiled as if he had slapped her. Don't you dare speak to me like that, she spat. I am your wife. You're nothing, Justin screamed. You're a broke heiress with a shopping addiction. Do you know what I did? Do you know what I signed on Sunday? He was pacing now, running his hands through his hair, tugging at the roots. I borrowed $200,000 from Jimmy the Shark. I put a deposit on 2 cars. I ordered a boat. I owe people money. Victoria, scary people. People who break legs, and I signed a promissory note backed by this trust. He pointed a shaking finger at the red folder. If I don't pay them back by Friday, they are going to kill me. Victoria stared at him. You what? I leveraged us, Justin yelled. Because you said the money was coming today. You said your father was a senile pushover. You said the will was ironclad. It was supposed to be, Victoria shrieked. How was I supposed to know they changed it? You should have read it, Justin roared. You should have treated him better, you greedy, short-sighted. He lunged at her. It wasn't a theatrical lunge this time. It was violence born of pure terror. He grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her. Fix this, he screamed in her face. Fix it. Make him give it back. Victoria was sobbing now, terrified, trying to push him away. Get off me, Justin. You're hurting me. I watched them. The hyenas had turned on each other. The pack was devouring itself. It was ugly. It was tragic. And it was exactly what Beatrice had predicted. Security. Leo barked into the intercom. The door burst open. 2 large men in dark suits stepped in. They didn't need instructions. They saw Justin shaking Victoria and moved instantly. One of them grabbed Justin by the back of his expensive suit jacket and hauled him away from her. Justin flailed, swinging a fist that connected with nothing but air. Get off me, Justin shouted. I'm the victim here. She defrauded me. The guard slammed Justin against the wall, pinning him there. Victoria collapsed into her chair, weeping into her hands. Her white suit was rumpled. Her perfect hair was a mess. She looked small. She looked broken. I stood up. My legs felt heavy but strong. I walked around the table until I was standing next to her. Victoria, I said. She looked up. Her mascara was running down her cheeks in black streaks. Her eyes were red. Dad, she whispered. Dad, please. Help me. He's going to leave me. If the money is gone, he's going to leave me. And the debts, I can't pay them. I don't have a job. I don't have anything. I looked down at her. I remembered holding her when she was a baby. I remembered her graduation. I remembered the pride I felt. But I also remembered the rain. I remembered the mud. I remembered the look on her face when she told me to go die. You have your husband, I said. You have the life you chose. You have the consequences of your actions. Dad, please, she begged, reaching for my hand. Just a little. Just enough to pay off the loan shark. Just enough to keep the house. I'll let you live there. I promise. I'll never be mean again. You don't get to let me live there, Victoria, I said coldly. I am the trustee. I am the owner. And as of this moment, you are trespassing. I turned to Leo. Is the transfer complete? Leo checked his computer screen. He typed a few keys. He looked up and nodded. The wire just went through, Leo said. $55 million. The MSPCA has confirmed receipt. The trust is empty of liquid assets. The house remains in your name, Fred, as a life estate. I looked back at Victoria. It's gone, I said. The money is gone. Victoria let out a wail that sounded like a siren. It was the sound of a soul realizing it had sold itself for a check that bounced. Get them out of here, Leo said to the guards. The guard holding Justin dragged him toward the door. Justin was still shouting, cursing Victoria, cursing me, cursing the world. You planned this, Justin screamed as he was hauled into the corridor. You set us up, you sick old freak. The second guard approached Victoria. He touched her elbow gently. Ma'am, you need to leave. Victoria stood up. She swayed on her feet. She looked at me one last time. There was no love in her eyes. Only hate. Pure, distilled hatred. I will never forgive you for this, she hissed. Good, I said. That makes 2 of us. She turned and walked out, stumbling on her high heels. She didn't look back at Justin. She didn't wait for him. She walked out alone into a world where she was no longer an heiress, no longer a socialite, just a woman with a mountain of debt and a husband who despised her. The door clicked shut. The silence returned. I sat down in the chair she had vacated. I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me so profound, I thought I might fall asleep right there. Leo didn't speak for a long time. He just poured 2 glasses of water and slid one over to me. "Are you okay, Fred?" he asked finally. I took a sip of the water. It was cool and clean. "I just orphaned my own daughter," I said. "You saved yourself," Leo corrected. "And you saved her from becoming a monster with a checkbook. She's broke, Fred. But she's alive. Maybe now she'll learn how to work. Maybe now she'll learn what money actually costs." "Maybe," I said. But I doubt it. I looked out the window at the harbor. The sun was shining on the water. It was a beautiful day. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," Leo said, picking up his phone. "Now we call the locksmiths. We change the codes on the gate. We hire a cleaning crew to get the smell of cheap champagne out of your carpets. And we call the contractor to fix your library." "And Justin?" I asked. Leo smiled grimly. "Justin has bigger problems than us. Jimmy the Shark doesn't take IOUs, and the district attorney is very interested in that hedge fund fraud. I give him 48 hours before he's in custody or in the hospital." I nodded. It was out of my hands. Justice was a machine, and I had just pressed the start button. I stood up. I straightened my tie. "I'm going home, Leo," I said. "I'll drive you," Leo said, standing up. "I don't want you taking a cab today. Today you ride in the front seat." We walked out of the office together. The receptionist smiled at me as we passed. "Have a good day, Mr. Winslow," she said. I looked at her. I smiled back. "I think I will," I said. "I think I will." As we rode the elevator down, I thought about the house waiting for me. It would be empty. It would be quiet. But it would be mine. And tonight, I would sit on the porch, I would drink a glass of wine that wasn't poured into a plastic cup, and I would toast to Beatrice. She had been right all along, and I was finally brave enough to listen. The security guards did not throw them out the front door like common drunks. That would have been too dignified. Instead, they escorted Victoria and Justin to the freight elevator, the service exit used for trash and deliveries. It was a final silent commentary on their status. I stood by the window in Leo's office for a moment, watching the street below, but Leo touched my arm. He told me we should go down. He said there was one more act to this play, and I needed to see it to truly believe it was over. We took the executive elevator. It was smooth, silent, and smelled of lemon polish. We reached the lobby just as Victoria and Justin were exiting the service corridor, spilling out into the marble atrium like oil onto water. They were arguing. It wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a dogfight. Victoria was sobbing, her makeup a black smear across her face, clutching her designer bag, as if it contained the oxygen she needed to breathe. Justin was pacing his phone pressed to his ear, his face a mask of purple rage. I stopped near the security desk. They didn't see me. They were too consumed by the collapse of their own gravity. I watched Justin pull the phone away from his ear and stare at the screen. He tapped it furiously. He was trying to move money. I knew exactly what he was seeing. He was seeing grayed-out boxes. He was seeing zeros. He was seeing the padlock icon that meant the bank's fraud department had locked the accounts due to suspicious activity. Leo had been efficient. The report about the retirement fund theft had triggered a freeze on every joint account Justin touched. Justin screamed. It was a wordless, guttural sound that echoed off the high ceilings. He threw his phone onto a leather bench. It bounced harmlessly. You said it was done, Justin roared at Victoria, ignoring the people in the lobby who were stopping to stare. You said the wire was pending. I showed the screenshots to the dealership. I showed them to Jimmy. I didn't know, Victoria wailed. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her. She looked like a child who had broken a vase and didn't understand why she couldn't just glue it back together. Dad never told me. He tricked me. He didn't trick you, Justin spat. You're stupid. You're just stupid. You never read the papers. You never checked the dates. You just walked around playing princess while I did the heavy lifting. Victoria stiffened. Heavy lifting. You gambled away $200,000 of my father's money. You bought a boat we couldn't afford. You leased cars we didn't need. You ruined us. Justin laughed. It was a manic, terrifying sound. Ruined us. No, sweetheart. You ruined us. I was leveraging, I was making moves. If that money had hit the account today, I would have doubled it in a month. But you had to open your mouth. You had to throw his clothes in the rain. You had to trigger the claws. His phone rang. It was lying on the bench where he had thrown it. He looked at it. The screen lit up. I couldn't see the name, but I saw the color drain from Justin's face. It was a fear so primal it was almost sentible. Answer it, Victoria hissed. I can't, Justin whispered. It's the dealership. The Ferrari. The phone kept ringing. It stopped, then immediately started again. Justin picked it up with a shaking hand. He put it on speaker, perhaps hoping that sharing the bad news would dilute it. Mr. Blake, as a crisp voice said, "This is the finance manager at Boston Exotic Motors. We have a problem with your deposit." Justin closed his eyes. "Look, there's been a delay with the wire transfer. The bank is—" The check bounced. Mr. Blake, the voice cut him off. "And the credit card you provided for the balance has been declined. Code 05. Do not honor." There was a silence. "We have a signed contract, Mr. Blake." The voice continued, cold and professional. "The non-refundable deposit clause is in effect. Furthermore, since you took possession of the vehicle on Sunday under a provisional lease, and that lease has been voided by the credit failure, we are reporting the vehicle as stolen." "Stolen," Justin squeaked. "You have 1 hour to return the vehicle to the lot, or we will activate the GPS kill switch and notify the police. You will be liable for the depreciation and the contract penalty. That's $40,000. Have a nice day." The line went dead. $40,000. Justin looked at Victoria. He didn't have $40. Then his phone beeped again. A text message. Justin read it. His hands started to shake uncontrollably. He dropped the phone. "What is it?" Victoria asked. "It's Jimmy." Justin breathed. "He says he knows the trust was dissolved. He says he wants his $200,000 by tonight, or he's sending a crew to the house." He looked around the lobby, his eyes wide and wild. He looked like a rat looking for a drainpipe. He realized then that he had no house. The house was mine. The security codes were changed. He couldn't go back there to hide. He was exposed. "We have to go," Justin said. "We have to leave town, now." Victoria blinked. "Leave town where? Anywhere?" Justin said, grabbing her arm. "We'll go to your parents' place in the Hamptons. We'll figure it out." "My parents hate you," Victoria said, pulling her arm away. "And they won't help us. Not when they find out we're broke." Justin looked at her. The calculation in his eyes shifted. He looked at her not as his wife, not as his partner, but as baggage. Dead weight. She had no money. She had no house. She had no inheritance. She was just a woman in a white suit with a mountain of debt, and a father who had just disowned her. She was useless to him. "Fine," Justin said. He straightened his jacket. He smoothed his hair. The panic was replaced by a cold, survivalist resolve. "Fine, what?" Victoria asked. "Fine, I'll go alone," Justin said. He turned and walked toward the revolving doors. Victoria called after him. "Justin, wait." He didn't stop. He walked out onto the sidewalk. Victoria ran after him, her heels slipping on the polished floor. I followed them out, standing under the awning, Leo beside me. Justin was walking toward the parking garage entrance. Victoria caught up to him and grabbed his sleeve. "Where are you going?" she screamed. "You can't leave me here, I have nothing." Justin spun around. He shoved her. It wasn't a gentle push. It was a hard shove to the chest. Victoria stumbled back and fell onto the concrete. She scraped her hands. She looked up at him, shocked. "Get away from me," Justin snarled. "You're a curse. Everything you touch turns to ash. I'm taking the Rover. You can walk." "The Rover is in my name," Victoria shrieked. "Not anymore," Justin said. "I have the keys, and I have a full tank of gas." He turned and ran into the garage. Victoria tried to stand up, but her heel had snapped. She sat there on the cold pavement, surrounded by strangers in business suits who were walking around her, averting their eyes. A minute later, a black Range Rover tore out of the garage exit. It jumped the curb, narrowly missing a pedestrian. Justin was behind the wheel. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at me. He merged into traffic, cutting off a bus, and sped away, disappearing into the city maze. He was running from the loan sharks, running from the police, running from the wreckage of the life he had tried to steal. Victoria sat on the ground. She watched the car disappear. The realization settled over her slowly like a shroud. He was gone. He had used her for the promise of money, and the moment the promise evaporated, so did he. She looked around. She saw me standing under the awning. Our eyes met. I expected her to scream. I expected her to curse me again. But she didn't. She just looked at me with a profound, empty confusion. She looked at her broken shoe. She looked at her dirty hands. I took a step forward. Leo put a hand on my shoulder. "Fred," he warned softly. "Don't." I stopped. I looked at the daughter I had raised. The daughter who had demanded I die so she could renovate. She was alone. She was broke. She was abandoned. And she deserved it. If I went to her now, if I offered her a hand, I would be undoing the lesson. I would be enabling the monster I had just slain. Beatrice wouldn't have gone to her. Beatrice would have let her sit there until she learned how to stand up on her own. I turned to Leo. "Let's go," I said. We walked to Leo's car, a modest sedan parked at the curb. I got in the passenger seat. As we pulled away, I looked out the window. Victoria was still sitting on the sidewalk. She had pulled her knees to her chest. She was crying, but nobody was stopping. The city was moving around her, indifferent to her pain. She was just another person who had made bad choices, facing the cold, hard concrete of consequence. She had wanted to be independent. She had wanted to be the queen. Now she was the exile. Leo drove in silence for a while. We merged onto the highway heading back toward Beacon Hill. "Do you think they'll catch him?" I asked finally. Justin Leo scoffed. "He's driving a car with a LoJack towards a state line with no money and a warrant out for fraud. He won't make it to Connecticut. He'll be in a cell by sunset." "And Victoria?" I asked. "She'll call a friend," Leo said. "Or she won't. She's 38 years old, Fred. She has a degree. She has health. She'll have to get a job. She'll have to learn what $500 actually buys you in the real world." I nodded. It was harsh. It was brutal. But it was necessary. We arrived at the estate 20 minutes later. The gates were closed. The new code I had given Leo worked perfectly. The iron gates swung open, welcoming the rightful owner home. We drove up the driveway. The Ferrari was gone. Justin must have taken it earlier, or the dealership had already come with a tow truck. The dumpster was still there, filled with the debris of my office. The lawn was torn up. There were red plastic cups scattered on the porch, but the house was still standing. The bricks were solid. The roof was sound. Leo stopped the car. I got out. I walked up the steps. I picked up a red cup and crushed it in my hand. I walked to the front door. I took out my keys. The old brass key slid into the lock. It turned smoothly. I opened the door. The house was quiet. It smelled of stale beer and expensive perfume, a lingering scent of the invasion. But underneath that, I could still smell the beeswax polish Beatrice used on the banister. I could still smell the old books in the library air. I walked inside. I didn't call out. There was no one to answer. I walked to the living room. My favorite armchair was gone, moved to the garage, probably. I stood in the center of the room. I was alone. But for the first time in 3 days, I wasn't lonely. I was home. I went to the kitchen. I found a bottle of cleaning spray and a rag. I started to wipe down the counters. I started to clean up the mess. I was reclaiming my territory. One wipe at a time, the king had returned, and the castle needed to be scrubbed. Leo stopped the car at the bottom of the driveway. The engine idled quietly, a soft hum that barely disturbed the evening air. I looked up at the house. My house. It stood against the darkening sky, bruised but still standing. The windows were dark save for the porch light that flickered slightly, a bulb that needed changing. It was a small task, the kind I used to do on Saturday mornings, and the thought of doing it again brought a strange, warm comfort to my chest. I turned to Leo. He looked tired. The shark-like energy of the conference room had faded, leaving behind the face of an old friend who had walked through fire with me. "Thank you, Leo," I said. He nodded, his hands gripping the steering wheel. "Call me if she comes back, Fred. Security is on speed dial. The police know the situation. You don't have to handle her alone." "I won't be alone," I said, looking at the house. "Beatrice is there." Leo smiled, a sad, knowing smile. He unlocked the doors. I stepped out onto the pavement. The air was crisp, smelling of wet earth and pine. I watched Leo's taillights disappear around the bend of the road, and then I was truly alone. I walked up the driveway. The Ferrari was gone, dragged away by the repo men Leo had alerted. The tire tracks in the lawn were deep scars in the mud, ugly wounds that would take a season to heal, but grass grows back. Grass always grows back. I reached the front door. I didn't need to ring the bell. I didn't need to knock. I slid my key into the lock, and the tumblers clicked with a heavy, satisfying sound. I stepped inside. The house smelled of stale party smoke and that cloying, expensive perfume Victoria favored, but beneath it, the house smelled like oak and old paper. It smelled like home. I didn't sit down. I didn't rest. I went straight to the kitchen phone and dialed the number for the moving company Leo had recommended. They were expensive, they were discreet, and they worked 24 hours a day. "I want everything out," I told the dispatcher. "If it wasn't in this house last Tuesday, it goes. Clothes, electronics, furniture, food. Everything." They arrived in 40 minutes, a crew of 6 men in blue coveralls. They worked in silence, moving through the house like white blood cells attacking an infection. I stood in the hallway and directed them. "That curved television," I said, pointing to the monstrosity Justin had mounted on the fireplace. "Out." The rack of designer coats in the foyer. Out. The cases of energy drinks in the pantry. Out. They carried it all down the driveway. They didn't put it in a truck. I told them not to. I told them to pile it on the curb, right where the public road met my private property. It was the exact spot where my suitcases had sat in the rain. It was a monument to their hubris, a mountain of consumerist junk piled high under the street lamp. By 9 o'clock, the house was purged. The walls were bare where they had ripped down Beatrice's paintings to put up modern art posters. The floors were scuffed. But the alien presence was gone. I tipped the movers and locked the door. I went to the library. The door was open. The room was a wreck. The shelves were empty, my books gone to the dumpster. My drafting table was gone, but the fireplace was still there. They hadn't had time to brick it over. I knelt down and touched the cold hearth. I would find a new table. I would buy new books. I would rebuild. Then the intercom buzzed. I knew who it was before I pressed the button to activate the camera. The grainy black and white image on the screen showed a woman standing at the iron gates. She was alone. She was hugging herself against the cold. Her white suit was ruined, stained with grit and sweat. She looked like a ghost haunting the place where she used to live. I didn't answer the intercom. I walked out the front door and down the driveway. The security lights clicked on as I walked, illuminating the path. I stopped 10 feet from the gate. Victoria saw me. She ran to the bars, gripping them with both hands. Her face was swollen from crying. "Dad," she sobbed. "Dad, please open the gate. It's freezing." I stood there, hands in my pockets. "It was freezing on Friday too, Victoria." She flinched. I know I was horrible. I was crazy. Justin made me do it. He convinced me that you were sick, that it was the only way. I was scared, Dad. I didn't want to lose the house." "You didn't lose the house because you were scared," I said calmly. "You lost the house because you were cruel. There is a difference." She looked at the pile of her belongings on the curb. She saw the television, the clothes, the boxes of shoes. She looked back at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You threw my stuff on the street," she whispered. "I evicted a trespasser," I corrected her. "You have 24 hours to collect it before the city takes it for trash. I suggest you call a U-Haul." "Dad, I have nowhere to go," she wailed, sinking to her knees on the asphalt. "Justin left me. He took the car. He blocked my number. I have no money. I have no credit cards. I can't check into a hotel, please, just for tonight. Let me sleep in my old room. I'll leave in the morning. I swear." I looked at her. I looked at the child I had raised. I saw the manipulation in her eyes, the desperate attempt to find a lever she could pull to open my heart. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she was cold. She was sorry the check bounced. "If I let you in, Victoria, I said I teach you nothing. If I let you in, I tell you that there are no consequences for betraying your family." Beatrice wouldn't want that. "Don't talk about Mom," she screamed, sudden anger flashing through her grief. "Mom would never do this to me. She loved me. She did love you," I said. "She loved you enough to ensure that you couldn't destroy yourself with her money. She loved you enough to force you to stand on your own 2 feet. "I can't," she screamed. "I don't know how." "Then you better learn," I said. "You are 38 years old. You are healthy. You are educated. You have the whole world, Victoria. Go earn a corner of it." I turned my back on her. "Dad," she screamed, "you can't leave me here. I'm your daughter." I kept walking. The sound of her sobbing faded as I reached the porch. I stepped inside and closed the massive oak door. I threw the deadbolt. The sound was heavy, final. It was the sound of a book closing. I went into the kitchen. I opened the cabinet where I kept the good crystal. I took out a single glass. I went to the cellar. Justin had drunk the Margot, but he had missed the bottle of 1968 port tucked behind the racks. I brought it upstairs. I walked through the quiet house, turning off the lights one by one. The living room, the dining room, the hall. I left the house in darkness save for the moonlight spilling through the high windows. I went upstairs to the master bedroom. I hadn't been in here since the funeral. The bed was unmade, the sheets tangled from where they had slept. I stripped the bed. I bundled the sheets into a ball and threw them into the hall. I would burn them tomorrow. I walked to the window seat where Beatrice used to sit and watch the rain. I poured a glass of port. The liquid was dark and thick like blood. I sat down and looked out over the estate. I could see the gate in the distance. Victoria was gone. She must have called a friend, or perhaps she was walking to the train station. It didn't matter. She was on her own path now. I took a sip of the wine. It tasted of plums and spice and history. I wasn't happy. Happiness is a light thing, a fleeting thing. What I felt was heavier. I felt peace. I felt the deep, solid satisfaction of order restored. The parasites were gone. The noise was gone. The lies were gone. I looked at the empty side of the room at Beatrice's vanity. I raised my glass to the empty air. "You were right, Bea," I whispered into the silence. "You were right about everything." I drank the wine. I sat in the dark. I listened to the house settle around me, the timbers creaking, the wind singing in the chimney. It wasn't a lonely sound. It was the sound of a fortress that had held. I was 73 years old. I was alone. I had just disowned my only child. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. I would wake up in my own bed. I would drink coffee in my own kitchen. I would read the paper in my own garden. I was the king, and the king was finally home. They say blood is thicker than water, but I learned that greed is a solvent that dissolves even the strongest bonds. For 40 years, I thought providing a life of luxury was an act of love. I was wrong. It was an act of enabling. The most valuable inheritance I could leave my daughter wasn't the millions she craved, but the harsh lesson she needed. That entitlement is a prison, and dignity is the only currency that matters. If you are ever forced to choose between your self-respect and your family, choose yourself. You might end up alone in a big house, but at least you will sleep soundly. If you enjoyed this story of justice served, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments. Would you have forgiven Victoria, or did she get exactly what she deserved?